Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of Title Hunt. First of all, in case you're wondering, I just recorded this after episode 2, which is why I have the same outfit on. Don't worry, I do wash my clothes. Um, but I just wanted to go over the last game of the over the board tournament that I played in. So if you didn't see the first couple episodes of this series, I just went over rounds 1 through 3 of this tournament that I played in, went over my analysis and my thoughts during the game. Um, and so, yeah, thought I'd finish it off here with the last game. Um, this one, I got paired up against a 1900, and in round three, I had just barely beaten a 2060, I believe. So I was feeling pretty confident, but still a little nervous, right? Uh, we both had 3 points in the tournament, and there was a lot of other people that had 3 points. So, well, I guess there was a lot of other people that had around 2.5, 2 points. Um, so I was thinking if I lose this, I'm going to maybe just tie for second place or something. Um, and of course, I'm playing black here. So the game started out with a Scandinavian. This is actually uh, the same thing that I played in the first game, where I was also black. Now, in that game, my opponent pushed the pawn to e5, which is a suboptimal move in this opening. But here, of course, my 1900 rated player plays into the main line. And after knight to c3, there's a few moves here. Some people like to bring the bishop or the queen back to d8. Some people like to play queen to d6 even. Main line is queen to a5. And I prefer queen to a5. There are some positions where she can get kind of trapped over here on the side of the board, but as long as you're careful not to let that happen, it's totally fine. Um, Although I wouldn't recommend this to beginners just because it's kind of tricky to not get the queen trapped sometimes. So he played pawn to d4. I brought my knight out to f6, knight to f3. I played bishop to f5. I was really hoping that here he would play bishop to c4 because there's this line that I have memorized that has seriously won me so many rapid games, even against like 23, 2400 chess.com rated players. Because after e6, uh, something like e6, bishop d2, bishop b4, castles, there's a trick where I like to play knight to c6, and literally everybody here will play a3, right? Very natural looking move. Obviously, the bishop can't move away because then I mean, b4 here, I think the queen just gets trapped. b4 there, knight to a4. Yeah, and the queen is just totally trapped. The best thing is to sack it for the knight and the pawn, which is obviously just a terrible position. So the only move here for black is to take. And after the bishop recaptures, what I like to do is I like to wait. This is during online games. I like to wait for about like 8, 10 seconds, as if I'm thinking, as if like I don't know this opening or like, oh, I messed up, like I didn't realize that you could do this, and move my queen to b6. Um, because so many people fall for this trap and push d5, thinking, okay, yeah, they're gonna take back. I'm gonna check. I opened up the center. The king hasn't castled. This is gonna be great. But after d5, then I immediately just play castle queenside, and it's like, oh wait, now the pawn is pinned to the queen, and if I take the knight, I lose my queen. Now this isn't actually too bad for black or for white because he gets a knight, a pawn, and a rook for a queen. So it's not even like a totally lost position for white. And I've even lost a game from this position as black. Although I think it might have been a blitz game, so maybe that doesn't count. But still, it's not super simple, but it is definitely an advantage for black. Um, and yeah, it's just a fun little trap that I was hoping I could maybe pull off against somebody in one of these tournaments. But unfortunately, rather than go into all of this after bishop to c4, my opponent played this annoying move, knight to e5. And it's annoying because I know obviously he's trying to go knight to c4. And if I don't do anything about it, it's starting to get really ugly. Um, it's apparently not completely lost, but it looks just really dangerous and it's not a great position. So obviously I've got to do something about knight to c4, and the best and possibly only real thing to do about it is to push c6 and to open up the c7 square for your king or for your queen. This is a really common uh, pattern or structure, I guess, that you get in the Scandinavian defense, where you, especially if the opponent, like for example, here, attacks the queen early. Sometimes this discovered attack can be scary. Sometimes it's not actually that scary, but sometimes it is, and so you can just push c6 and bring your queen back to c7. And the reason I like this opening so much is because you get structures like this where you're just really solid. You bring your bishop out, you push e6, and white will never be able to push d5 because you have both of your pawns staring at that square, and you're just going to slowly bring your rooks to the d file, double them up. You're going to swing your knight around. You're going to maybe plant a knight here and just blockade the center. It leads to some pretty fun positions. But anyway, so in the actual game, my opponent played knight to e5, and so I played c6, and here he thought for a while and then played g4. And g4 is definitely an idea in some lines of the Scandinavian defense. It can actually be really scary because if you like bring your bishop back, then white just plays h4. And this is already basically lost for black because you can't ever really push your h pawn up like you normally would because this knight now just takes your bishop, and after takes, white pushes g5, takes your knight away, and this pawn structure is just awful for black. Um, White can immediately target this weak g6 pawn, and I don't even think there's a way to defend it. Yeah, because after king to f7, white plays queen to f3 check. Um, and if something like this, I mean, yeah, do I need to say more? This is just totally lost. So you don't want to allow that kind of a structure, which is why here I was like, okay, so I don't want to play bishop to g6. Bishop to e4 is also really dangerous in a lot of cases because although it looks kind of good, right? We're attacking this rook, the knight's pinned, so it can't actually take. In some cases, white can just push f3, and sometimes even like this bishop can become trapped on d5. Um, and I was right, this isn't the best idea, going bishop to e4. However, I played a move and then immediately went, why did I play that? And I think I know why. I'll try to explain it. So I played bishop to d7. And as you can see, the computer does not really like this. And like I said, right after I played it, I just was like, wait, why did I do that? I think why I did what I was thinking is there's some lines. One of the hardest things about the Scandinavian, in my opinion, is keeping track of the structures and the positions that you want in each of the different lines because there's so many there's so many different lines, there's so many different move orders that white can do that change the structure that you need in the position. um, there's some games where, for example, I think here you play bishop g4. um, Usually you'd like to put the bishop on f5, but here this move actually loses to queen to f3. I say loses, it's like plus 1.3 for white. I actually had this position in a game sometime last year over the board. Um, and it was funny because right after I played bishop f5, I was like, wait, I remember the computer telling me before this game when I was looking over my opening lines that this was not right because of queen f3. And the whole point is that you're attacking b6, and if you try to defend it, well, then b4. And the queen has nowhere safe to keep defending this bishop. So actually here, the only move to stay in the game is bishop back to c8, which is one of those moves that you would just never play if you hadn't seen that it's the best move and seen why, right? Like you just barely move this bishop out, especially psychologically. Sorry, in like this position. It's like psychologically it just feels so wrong to like undo a move that you just did. But sometimes that's just the position that you have and you have to deal with it. Anyways, I remember that in that game a while ago where I got to this position, I remembered that, played bishop to c8. I was a little frustrated, but I actually went on to win this game. So, maybe that's actually a strategy to kind of throw in the opening a little bit, but not actually. Anyways, the whole point of this is that in this line specifically, the right move instead of bishop to f5 is bishop to g4. And after f3, you bring the bishop back to d7, and your whole idea is you're going to push e6, c6, bring your bishop out somewhere, castle, and white's bishop will probably come to c4. Even if it doesn't, usually pushing b5 is right, and then bringing your knight around this way. Right, because that's one of the hard things sometimes with having this bishop on d7 is that it's like, well, once I push c6, where's this knight going on b8? But it can just swing around a6 to c7. There's a saying that a lot of people who are new to chess are told, which is knights on the rim are dim, and that is true in a lot of cases. A knight on the edge of the board is not as good as it is in the center. However, there's some positions where, you know, well, you move the knight to a6 because you're planning on immediately moving it to c7 in that position, right? And so in that case, it's okay because it's just an extra move to get you to a better square that's more in the center. Anyways, that's all maybe way too deep of an analysis. But the whole point is I think I got that move order and that position and that structure kind of just stuck in my mind. And I didn't think, but that's after white has played f3. But here white has played g4 and also knight to e5. So it's just not the same position. And so, yeah, I think the biggest lesson from this game is I just can't draw too many things from other lines in the opening that I play, because there might be something like this where it's just not the right setup. Because actually in this game, my opponent played g5. I moved the knight out of the way, and he played queen to f3. And this is where I kind of got scared. I was like, oh boy, I think I've messed up. Because this knight is just super strong, putting pressure on f7. Queen comes in. And here, I'm glad I actually did find the best move, the only move really, which is bishop to e6. And this is why I was kind of frustrated in the opening as well, because I thought I moved bishop to e7 and then just moved it back to e6. Like, why didn't I just move it to e6 first? There, not e7. It's like if I just moved it to e6 first, I'd be up a tempo. I'd be able to make a move right now. But I'm down a tempo now, which is terrible in a position where you're trying to defend. Now, here my opponent starts to go wrong a little bit, I think. First he moves his bishop, or his knight to c4, rather, which attacks my queen. But the funny thing is, my queen isn't really doing a whole lot on this square. Sure, she's pinning the knight, but it's not that important of a pin, because the knight's not really threatening anything. So actually, by moving knight to c5, I was actually pretty happy to see this move, because now I just get to move my queen where I wanted her anyways. And now his knight is kind of off center. It's not where it's supposed to be here on e5. So in a way, this was just a slight inaccuracy, I think, of attacking my piece but forcing it to a better square, right? That's why it's not always good to just make one move attacks on pieces. Anyways, here, and then here he moves his knight to e4. And once again, I was just kind of like, well, what's the plan with this knight, right? Like, g5 is blocked by the pawn. Obviously, my e7 pawn is blocking both of these squares. I was like, is he trying to go here? That might be the idea, but, like, that's just way too slow, because I just go knight to d7. And if knight to c5, now I just trade. And I'm totally fine. In fact, now I'm totally winning, it says. So it was really interesting, because for a couple moves here, I was really nervous. Here, right here, I saw queen to f3, and I just got terrified. I was like, oh no. And then I saw bishop to e6, and I actually saw bishop to h3. And at first I was like, I think I'm just totally lost here. Because what do? I take. He takes. He's threatening mate on c8. So, like, how do I stop that? I have to push e6, and then, I mean, he can just come back here. And anyways, I was just, if I block, then he comes back here. And what am I going to do to defend this? I'm going to move my queen back, but then he's going to get his knight in. And now I've weakened this f6 square, right? In this position, both my pawns, the position that actually happened in the game, this f square is not weak at all. Both my pawns are defending it. So anyways, I was really scared earlier, but here I started to feel more like, maybe I have a chance to come back here. My opponent plays bishop to e7 or d2. I don't know why I said e7. That's not even close to e7. I think why I said e7 is because I was saying it. This would be e7 if it was white's perspective. That's funny. Castle long. He played castles. Here I played g6. just kind of giving some breathing room for my bishop to maybe come out on this diagonal if it needs to. And here he played a really weird move. Like, I remember just being like, I don't think that that's right, actually. He played queen to a6. Now, it's not a terrible move, but you see how it's kind of starting to be like, maybe black has a little bit of an advantage. Because this move, I mean, this queen was already pretty active here. I know that my bishop's defending and all, but she was okay here. The queen just comes over here, supposedly making this one move threat on a7. But I think I talked about this in the last episode. In a lot of positions where you castled queenside, right? When you castle kingside, your king is going to end up on g8 or g1, which means that he will defend all of the pawns right here. When you castle queenside, though, because you only move 2 squares in both cases, your king ends up on the c file, which means that you generally end up moving the king to either b8 or b1 to get a position almost like where he would be if he castled kingside, if that makes sense, right? Where you're defending this pawn on the a file. So that's just what I did. I just king to b8, and this would be scary if he had another piece that could put pressure on this pawn, but there's nothing, right? Like, this bishop is, it can't jump over the d pawn, so how's it ever gonna, it's never gonna be able to get there. And neither of the knights are ever going to be able to attack it either because of my pawn on c6. So I was like, I think that this is actually pretty good. And I also started looking at ideas of moving this e-pawn eventually with a discovered attack on the queen, right? I mean, like, say that he like moved here and I moved here, and I don't know. If his bishop was here, I could like push this pawn up, and it's a double attack on his queen and his bishop. Obviously here I can just take, but you get the idea. Maybe there might be some position where I can push and get a double attack and win material. So he actually did play bishop g2 in the game. Look at that. I actually kind of forgot about that. So here I played knight to f4, and at first I thought, oh, this is just a double attack, right? His bishop's hanging, his knight's hanging. But then he defended his bishop with his knight. That's a pretty nice move, retreating it. Although, funny enough, it's actually not the best move. The best move is to do it with this piece. I don't really understand that because it looks like it's just way less active on the f square, f1. But I don't know. I guess that's just better for white. In both cases, it's the idea of moving a piece out of danger and then simultaneously defending another piece that's in danger. So pretty cool move. Now here I actually saw I don't want to take this bishop because after knight takes, this diagonal is starting to look pretty scary, right? Bishop to f4 I think is actually like a really strong threat here. Yeah, there's nothing that I can do about this pin. So I would be losing my queen for the bishop. So I was like, okay, I don't want to take this bishop. I want to keep the tension here and not really take anything. I want to just try to add more pressure onto pieces. So I did that with bishop to f5. Another purpose for this move is bringing the bishop closer to this diagonal. Potentially in the future this could matter if the king gets more exposed. I'm also putting some pressure on this knight. I'm also potentially threatening this discovered attack on the queen like I mentioned earlier. And here I think I'm actually threatening to play knight takes bishop, knight takes knight, and bishop takes knight. Because in this position, if bishop to f4 is played, well, because my bishop is no longer on e6, I can push e5. And this is just a totally losing position for white. If bishop takes, I can actually take the bishop first rather than taking the queen. And the queen is still under attack and the knight's under attack. And it's just everything's falling apart for white. So he defended that threat with rook h to e1, because now obviously after takes, the knight is defended. So after rook h to e1, I was like, well, let's push e5. Now obviously he's going to see this discovered attack, but I was like, well, I'm still kind of threatening this pawn, adding some defense to the knight potentially. And here he played knight to c5. And right as you played it, I was like, huh, I think I just won. And I was right, thankfully, because this knight is pinned to the queen now, and the knight is only defended by the pawn and the queen. So this was actually another um, tactic from episode 2 from my second round, where because in episode 2 I analyzed rounds 2 and 3, um, a similar position where I was able to take a piece which removed a defender of a different piece and allowed me to capture it. So here, the correct move is, of course, e takes d4, which removes this. Like, this is a pretty crazy position, right? Like, the knight is now not defended well enough. The knight's also pinned to the queen. This knight is under attack by the pawn, and this knight is defending this bishop, which can be taken by the knight. Um, so there's just all sorts of stuff happening, and there's some lines where this bishop might be able to come pin my queen. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on, but I had calculated that after knight takes bishop, I take the knight with my bishop, um, right, gaining a tempo on the queen because now the queen has to move. And after the queen moved, I thought, okay, obviously he's threatening to take my knight. So if I play pawn takes knight, he's going to play either bishop takes or queen takes f4. And now I'm actually forced to retreat my bishop back because of the pin. And he can take this pawn, and now he's actually winning. So of course here, the correct move is knight takes g2, which now, on top of his knight being hanging by this pawn, now his rook is under attack. And the best thing about that rook being under attack is that he played a knight to h6 in the game. After I take the rook with my knight, now his queen is under attack as well. So it's just a bunch of like attacking everything. And I mean, this isn't exactly super important, but it just meant that he couldn't really like play any other move in between taking my knight. So he had to take my knight, and now I saw, well, he's going to try to take this pawn on f7. If he takes it right now with the knight, he kind of gets a fork, even though I think I can just pin his knight. Knight takes f7, rook h. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, wait. Oh, wow. Yeah. So, anyways, this is a little too complicated, but yeah, if I try to pin his knight, then he actually pins my queen, and the one of the only moves is to block with the bishop, because after bishop takes, now I take, and then this queen is hanging and I can take it because the knight was pinned. That's some really heavy calculation. Rather than calculating all of that, I figured let's just defend it. And here I just played a nice move. He's still not really threatening to play bishop f4 because of my bishop coming to d6, but that's always scary when your opponent has some really strong threat that is only stopped by like one little flimsy thing like bishop to d6. So just to avoid any sort of, crazy stuff, crazy tactics, I just played king to a8. And another thing too is at this point I thought, okay, I'm up, 6 points of material, and also my opponent was down to like 20 seconds on the clock. Once again, it's 25-minute per side, 5-second increment. I think I still had around 10 minutes. He had 30 seconds with a 5-second increment. So even if he makes every move within 5 seconds, he's going to be really low on time the rest of the game. And here he actually sat there for a while looking around. His clock got down to 1 second, and he picked up this a pawn, or the h pawn, to move it to h4, and wasn't able to hit the clock in time and flagged. So I won my last game here in this position, and it was a really exciting tournament. There was obviously those 2 upsets where I beat the 2060 and then this 1904. And like I mentioned, I think in the last episode, I originally, before this tournament, was rated 1769, and my rating jumped up to something like 1854 or something. I need to double check, but it was a really big rating increase for me, which is super nice, because hopefully I can have some more events like this. I can have some more performances like this. I think um, the USCF website said that I had a performance of like 2400. I don't know how it calculates that though, because really all I played were two underrated opponents. Well, two opponents that were lower rated than me, right? 850, 1200, and then two opponents that were a few hundred points higher rated than me. I don't know how it can say that I had a 2400 rating performance. I don't actually think I'm 2400 UFC. That would be crazy. Or UFC? USCF? Wow. Not the right sport at all. um, anyways, but needless to say, I had a very strong performance, I thought, in the tournament. I had that game round three against the 2000 where I felt like I was in control the whole time. This time I was losing in the opening, but was able to come back from it. So I had a few kind of different performances where I was able to score well. And yeah, with that, um, have a nice day, everyone.